Night has settled. The sea is calm. The sky waits. There is no rush here. Nothing you need to understand. Nothing you need to hold on to. This is a story of hidden light, of paths found in fog, and of knowledge passed from one quiet hand to another. You don't need to stay awake. If sleep comes, let it come. Breathe slowly. The ship moves gently. The night knows the way. Welcome to Dreamy On. The voyage begins. The old man could see the sun through solid fog. It seemed impossible to everyone watching. Yet there he stood on the ship's bow, holding a pale crystal to the gray sky, his weathered face calm as still water. The fog had blanketed the northern sea for 3 days, so thick you couldn't see the ship's mast from stern. But Halvard, the last of the Sunstone Navigators, found light where others saw only emptiness. The younger sailors watched from their rowing benches, muscles aching from hours of blind progress through waters they couldn't chart. They'd been following Halvard's whispered directions for a week now, trusting him even as the fog swallowed every landmark, every reference point, leaving them suspended in a world of gray. The ship creaked gently as waves they couldn't see lifted and lowered them in rhythmic motion. 3 degrees starboard, Halvard murmured, his voice barely rising above the wind's sigh. The helmsman obeyed without question. Years of sailing with the old navigator had taught him never to doubt. There was something about Halvard that commanded respect. Not the loud, boastful kind earned by warriors in mead halls, but the quiet respect given to someone who understood mysteries beyond ordinary comprehension. Imagine yourself there on that deck, cold spray on your face, watching an elderly man commune with a piece of crystal as though it were alive. You might wonder, as the crew did, how such a simple thing could reveal what the sky concealed. The stone was no larger than a fist, translucent and pale, seemingly ordinary. They called it Iceland spar, found in certain northern caves. In bright sunlight, it had a peculiar property. It would split a single ray into 2, creating double images. But its true magic lay deeper. Even when clouds hid the sun completely, the stone could find it. Polarized light scattering through the atmosphere created subtle patterns in the crystal, patterns revealing the sun's hidden position to those who knew how to read them. But actually, Halvard's gift went beyond mere technique. He understood something that couldn't be taught from books, something learned only through decades of listening to the sea, feeling the ship's movements, reading signs most men never noticed. Navigation wasn't just about finding position. It was about becoming part of the voyage itself, surrendering to wave and wind rhythms, letting them speak their ancient language. This is what he tried teaching the young men who sailed with him, though few truly grasped it. They wanted formulas, techniques, concrete instructions to memorize and repeat. They wanted exact angles for holding the stone, precise interpretation methods. Halvard showed them these things patiently, repeatedly, but he knew the real teaching lay deeper in wordless places. One young man seemed different, though. His name was Eric, the Jarl's youngest son, barely 20 winters old. Unlike his older brothers who chose the warrior's path, Eric had always been drawn to quieter pursuits. He loved watching the sea for hours, noticing how light changed throughout the day, how wave patterns shifted with depth and wind. When he asked to apprentice with Halvard, his father was disappointed. Navigators earned respect, but weren't celebrated in songs like warriors. Still, the Jarl allowed it, and for 2 years now, Eric had shadowed the old man on every voyage. On this particular journey, as fog continued wrapping them in cold embrace, Eric stood close to Halvard without intruding. He watched every movement the navigator made, trying to understand not just what Halvard did, but how the quality of attention he brought to each moment. "Come here, boy," Halvard said suddenly, not looking at Eric. "Hold this." He handed Eric the Sunstone. The young man took it reverently, as though accepting something sacred. The crystal felt surprisingly warm despite cold air, and it had a weight seeming disproportionate to its size. Not physical weight exactly, but a kind of gravity, a presence. "Now," Halvard said, voice taking on his teaching tone, "tell me what you see." Eric held the stone up as he'd seen Halvard do countless times. He looked through it at gray sky, turned it slowly, searched for patterns he knew should be there. But he saw nothing unusual, just the same formless fog surrounding them. "I don't see anything," he admitted, keeping frustration from his voice. "Good," Halvard said, hint of a smile in his tone. "That's the first step, admitting you don't see. Most men pretend to see something, anything, rather than confess blindness. But you can't learn true sight until you acknowledge you're blind." The old man moved beside Eric, placing his weathered hand over the young man's hand on the stone. "Don't look for patterns yet," he said softly. "First, just feel the stone. Feel its weight. Notice how it sits in your palm. Pay attention to how your hand naturally wants to turn it, the way it seems pulled in certain directions." Eric closed his eyes, following the instruction. At first, he felt only cool smoothness and Halvard's warm hand over his. But as he stood there, breathing slowly, letting his mind quiet, he began noticing other sensations. The stone did seem to have subtle pull, a tendency to orient itself in particular directions. So faint he couldn't be sure he wasn't imagining it, but present, or seeming to be. "Yes," Halvard murmured, sensing the shift in Eric's attention. "You're beginning to feel it. That's not the stone pulling you exactly. It's you learning to sense what the stone shows you. The crystal doesn't think or choose. It simply responds to light that's always there, even when we can't see it. Your task is becoming sensitive enough to read that response." He released Eric's hand and stepped back. "Keep holding it. Keep feeling. Don't force anything. Just notice." Eric stood there for what felt like a long time, the ship rocking gently beneath him, fog pressing close on all sides. Other sailors had returned to tasks, but he felt them glancing his way occasionally, wondering what the old man was teaching the Jarl's son. He tried ignoring their attention, focusing only on the stone, on subtle sensations in his hand, on the strange dance between perception and imagination occurring. Slowly, very slowly, something began shifting. He started noticing that when he turned the stone certain ways, there was faint change in how light appeared through it. Not dramatic, not obvious, but present nonetheless. Like trying to hear distant sound over wind noise, or trying to see a star appearing only when you looked slightly away from it. "There," he breathed. "I think I see something." "Don't think," Halvard corrected gently. "Trust. Trust what you perceive, even if it seems impossible. Especially if it seems impossible. The fog began thinning slightly as day wore on, though the sun itself remained hidden behind gray. Halvard had Eric continue holding the stone, turning it, learning to read its subtle messages. Gradually, over that long afternoon, the young man began understanding that navigation at this level wasn't about knowledge, but relationship. A relationship with light and water and sky, with tools used and vessel carrying you, with your own senses and capacity for patient attention. When evening approached and gray sky darkened toward night, Halvard finally took the stone back from Eric's tired hands. "Enough for today," he said. "Your eyes need rest, and your mind needs time processing what you've learned or begun to learn." Eric nodded, arms aching from holding them up so long, mind buzzing with strange mixture of confusion and clarity, often following Halvard's lessons. He made his way to his sleeping place below deck, where other sailors were already settling for night. The ship continued steady progress through water, guided by Halvard's directions and the helmsman's steady hand. But sleep didn't come easily to Eric that night. He lay in his bedroll, feeling the ship's movement beneath him, listening to timber creaks and wave splashes against the hull. His mind kept returning to the Sunstone, to those moments when he'd almost, but not quite, understood what Halvard was teaching. Like trying to remember a dream dissolving the moment you wake, leaving only feeling behind. He thought about his brothers, probably sitting in some hall now, drinking mead and telling battle stories. They'd laugh at him if they could see him, lying awake on a merchant vessel, obsessing over crystal and an old man's words. But Eric didn't care. He found something on this voyage feeling more real, more important than glory or reputation. He just didn't know yet what to call it. Above deck, Halvard stood at his usual post, sunstone in hand though night was too dark now to use it. He wasn't navigating anymore. In full dark, with no stars visible through clouds, even he had to rely on dead reckoning and feel, trusting the ship's course, and making small adjustments based on wind direction and swell patterns. But he held the stone anyway, as always, finding comfort in its familiar weight, in the decades of journeys it represented. He thought about Eric, about the progress the young man was making. Slow progress, but then it always was. No one learned true navigation in a season or even a year. It took time, patience, willingness to fail and try again, to stand in uncertainty without panic, to trust senses you didn't know you had until you started developing them. But there was something else Halvard noticed in Eric, something he hadn't seen in many other young men he'd tried training over the years. Eric had what Halvard thought of as quietness, not just noise absence, but a quality of inner stillness allowing him to actually pay attention. Most people, even when silent, were so full of internal chatter, so busy thinking and planning and worrying, they couldn't really perceive what was in front of them. But Eric had moments when he could go genuinely quiet inside, when he could simply be present with what was happening. And in those moments, real learning became possible. The night deepened, fog thinned slightly, and a few stars appeared in breaks between clouds, enough for Halvard to confirm what he already knew. They were on course, heading steadily north toward the trading settlement that was their destination. He estimated another 3 days sailing if weather held, maybe 4 if it turned against them. He thought about the settlement, about people there who'd be glad to see the ship arrive with its cargo of wool and iron and amber. He thought about the journey back, coming in a few weeks after they traded and rested. And he thought about all the journeys before, decades of sailing these northern waters, learning their moods and secrets, becoming part of their rhythm. How many times had he made this run? 50? 100? He'd lost count years ago. But each journey was different, each one teaching him something new, or reminding him of something forgotten, or deepening understanding of something he thought he already knew. The sea was an endless teacher, patient and impatient by turns, generous and harsh, always demanding respect, but rewarding those who gave it. Actually, this might be his last voyage. The thought had been growing in him for months, though he hadn't spoken it aloud. He was getting old, not just in years, but in how his body felt, how his eyes tired more quickly, how his hands sometimes ached and cold. He could still do the work, could still read the Sunstone and guide the ship, but he could feel his capacity diminishing slowly but unmistakably. And he didn't want to be one of those old men who hung on too long, who kept sailing past the point where they were truly capable, risking others' lives because they couldn't let go. If Eric continued showing promise, if he proved himself on this voyage and the next, then perhaps it would be time for Halvard to step back, to let the younger man take his place. The thought brought both sadness and relief. Sadness because sailing was who he was, had been his entire adult life. Relief because he was tired, bone-tired, and the thought of spending remaining years on solid ground, teaching for memory rather than constant practice, had its own appeal. But these were thoughts for later. For now, there was the ship to guide and a young man to train and the eternal dance with wind and water and sky. The night passed slowly, peacefully. Fog lifted enough to reveal more stars, and Halvard used them to refine their course, making minor adjustments, saving time and distance. The crew slept except for those on watch, and the ship sailed on through dark water like a living thing, finding its way north by human skill and natural law intertwined. When dawn came, it came gradually, darkness loosening its grip degree by degree, eastern sky brightening from black to gray to pale, luminous blue. The fog had cleared almost entirely during night, and for the first time in days, they could see the horizon, a clean line where sky met sea, sharp and clear and infinitely far away. Eric emerged from below deck just as the sun broke free of the horizon, sending golden light racing across water. He stopped, transfixed by the beauty of it, by how light transformed everything it touched. The sea, which had been gray and formless in fog, now revealed itself in shades of blue and green, its surface textured with small waves catching and reflecting the sun like thousands of tiny mirrors. Halvard was there, of course, at his post. He glanced at Eric and nodded toward the sunrise. "This is why we do it," he said simply. "Not for destinations, really. For these moments. For the privilege of seeing such things." Eric understood. He moved to stand beside the old navigator, and together they watched as the sun climbed higher, watched as light changed and color shifted and the world revealed itself anew. And in that watching, in that simple act of paying attention to beauty, something in Eric settled and opened simultaneously. He felt connected to sea and sky in a way he'd never felt before, felt himself not separate from the voyage, but part of it, woven into its fabric. This was the real lesson he understood suddenly. Not just how to use a sunstone or read stars, but how to be present with the world, how to participate fully in each moment, how to let the journey move through you as much as you move through it. Halvard saw the understanding dawn in Eric's face and smiled. He didn't need to say anything. The moment said it all. The day unfolded in brilliant clarity, sun climbing its arc across a sky swept clean of clouds. The crew, energized by good weather's return, sang as they rode, voices blending with or rhythm and water splash. The ship made excellent progress, cutting through swells with wind at its quarter, sail full and pulling them northward. Halvard let Eric take the Sunstone for periods during the day, coaching him in how to use it even when sun was clearly visible. Because, he explained, you needed to practice in easy conditions so you'd be ready when conditions became difficult. Eric spent hours with the crystal, learning to see light patterns more clearly, understanding how the stone's double images could reveal the sun's position with mathematical precision. But Halvard also taught him other things, subtler things having nothing to do with the stone itself. He taught him to read watercolor, which could tell you about depth and currents and what lay beneath. He taught him to watch seabird flight, which could indicate nearby land or fish schools or approaching storms. He taught him to feel wind shifts, to notice when it veered or backed, to sense pressure changes preceding weather transformations. A good navigator, Halvard said, uses every tool available, not just the Sunstone. The stone is wonderful, yes, but it's only one information source. The sea itself will teach you if you learn its language. The sky will guide you. The ship will speak to you through how it moves. Your task is listening to all of it, integrating all these different sources into coherent understanding of where you are and where you're going. Eric absorbed these teachings like a dry sponge absorbs water. He was learning faster now, not because Halvard was teaching differently, but because something had shifted in Eric himself. The frustration he'd felt earlier had given way to patience, and the patience had opened him to deeper perception. He was beginning to understand that becoming a navigator wasn't about mastering techniques, but about transforming himself, developing capacities he didn't know he possessed. As afternoon wore on and sun began its descent toward western horizon, Halvard called Eric over to where he stood by the mast. Tonight, he said, I want you to take the watch. I'll be nearby, but you'll be responsible for maintaining our course. Use the stars once they appear. Feel the wind. Trust yourself. Eric felt a flutter of nervousness in his chest. What if I make a mistake? You will make mistakes, Halvard said calmly. That's how you learn. But mistakes made with attention and care are valuable. They teach you things success never can. And I'll be watching. If you start taking us too far off course, I'll intervene. But I don't think I'll need to. That evening, as twilight deepened and stars began emerging, Eric took his position at deck center. The helmsman looked to him for direction, and Eric felt responsibility's weight settle onto his shoulders. He had the Sunstone in his pocket, but it was useless now in darkness. Instead, he looked up at stars, identifying familiar constellations, using them to orient himself. The North Star hung steady in its position, the fixed point around which all other stars rotated. He found the Big Dipper, traced the line from its cup to confirm the North Star's position, noted where other key stars sat in relation to it. He felt wind on his face, noted which direction it came from. He felt the ship's movement, The way it rose and fell on swells, the subtle feedback through deck boards telling him they were tracking true. "Hold steady," he told the helmsman, and his voice was calm, more confident than he felt inside. Hours passed. Stars wheeled slowly overhead, following their ancient, predictable paths. Eric stood watch, making minor corrections when he felt them necessary, trusting his growing sense of the ship's relationship to wind and water and sky. And somewhere behind him, though he couldn't see him in darkness, Halvard stood silently, observing, ready to step in if needed, but content to let the young man find his way. It was during this watch, in the deep middle of night, when stars blazed with particular brightness and the sea had calmed to gentle swells, that Eric experienced something he would remember for the rest of his life. It started as a sensation, a feeling that he was not separate from his surroundings, but part of them, continuous with them. The boundary between self and world seemed to soften, become permeable. He could feel the ship as if it were his own body, could sense water flowing past the hull, could perceive wind not as something external pushing against him, but as a force he was moving through, dancing with. The stars weren't just lights in the sky, but were somehow present, intimate, close despite their vast distance. And the darkness itself, the great dark ocean they sailed upon, felt not threatening, but welcoming, like returning to something familiar and safe. It lasted only a few moments, this experience of unity, of being woven into the voyage's fabric. Then his thinking mind kicked back in, noting what was happening, trying to analyze it, and in the noting and analyzing, the experience faded. But it had been real as anything Eric had ever experienced, and it changed something fundamental in his understanding of what navigation meant. It wasn't just about finding your way from one place to another. It was about becoming so attentive, so present, so integrated with your surroundings that finding your way happened naturally, almost without effort, like a river finding the sea. When his watch ended and another sailor came to relieve him, Eric made his way to where Halvard sat wrapped in a heavy cloak against night chill. "Did you feel it?" the old man asked without preamble. "Yes," Eric said, knowing exactly what Halvard meant. "I don't know what to call it, but yes." "No name for it," Halvard said. "It's not something you can capture in words. But once you've felt it, you'll recognize it again. And the more you navigate, the more often it comes. Until eventually, if you're lucky and you practice enough and you stay humble, it becomes your normal state. You stop being someone navigating and become navigation itself." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching stars, feeling the ship's steady progress through dark water. And Eric understood that this was perhaps the greatest gift Halvard could give him. Not techniques or knowledge, but this glimpse of what was possible, this invitation into a way of being in the world richer and deeper than he'd imagined. The voyage continued. Days blended into each other, each bringing new lessons, new challenges, new moments of beauty and insight. They encountered a storm on the fourth day, and Eric learned how different navigation became when the world turned violent, when waves towered over the ship and wind tore at the sail and rain lashed horizontal across the deck. He learned that in such conditions, all subtle navigation arts gave way to something more primal: survival, endurance, grim determination to keep the ship afloat and moving until the storm passed. Halvard remained calm throughout, his voice steady as he gave orders, his presence an anchor point of stability in the chaos. And Eric watched, learned, and understood that this too was part of being a navigator. The ability to remain centered when everything around you is turbulence and uncertainty, to trust your skills and experience even when fear suggested panic. The storm passed, as storms always do. The sky cleared. They assessed damage. Minor, thankfully, made repairs and continued north. And 2 days later, on a bright afternoon with sun warm despite northern latitude, they spotted land ahead, the first sight of the settlement that was their destination. The crew cheered, voices carrying across water. Even the usually stoic Halvard smiled, pleased that his navigation had brought them true, that they would arrive with cargo intact and timeline met. Eric felt a surge of pride and gratitude. Pride in how much he'd learned on this voyage, gratitude for Halvard's patient teaching. As they sailed into the harbor, as the settlement grew larger and more detailed before them, Halvard called Eric to his side once more. "You did well," he said simply. "Better than I expected. Actually, you have a gift, if you choose to develop it." "I want to," Eric said immediately. "I want to learn everything you can teach me." Halvard nodded slowly. "Then we'll make another voyage when this one ends, and another after that, until you're ready to navigate on your own, to take ships to places I've never been, to discover things I'll never see." That's how it works. The student eventually surpasses the teacher, carries the knowledge forward, adds their own discoveries to it. They spent a week at the settlement, trading their cargo, resting, making minor repairs to the ship. Eric explored the town, met other navigators, heard stories of voyages to even more distant places, to Iceland, to Greenland, to lands beyond that were barely more than rumors. And he felt his world expanding, felt possibilities opening before him like a map unfurling. But he also spent time each day with Halvard, continuing his lessons. Because there was so much still to learn, and he was hungry for all of it. They would walk along the shore, and Halvard would point out coastline features, explaining how to use them for navigation, how to remember them, how to describe them to others who might sail these waters in the future. They would sit and watch tides, and Halvard would explain the moon's influence, the patterns of high and low water, how to use tidal currents to advantage. And they would talk, sometimes about things beyond navigation, about life and death and meaning, about what it meant to spend your days in service of something larger than yourself, about how skills developed in one domain, patience, attention, trust, could transform how you lived in all domains. The sea teaches more than navigation. Halvard said one evening as they sat watching sunset paint the western sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. It teaches you about yourself, about your limits and capacities, about fear and courage, about humility. You can't sail these waters for long without being changed by them. How has it changed you? Eric asked. Halvard was quiet for a long moment, considering. It's made me smaller and larger at the same time, he said finally. Smaller because I understand how vast the world is, how little any individual life matters in the grand scheme of things. Larger because I've learned to be fully present in my own small life, to inhabit each moment completely rather than always being somewhere else in my mind. The sea demands presence. You can't navigate while lost in thought about past or future. You have to be here now, attending to what is." Eric nodded, understanding. This was what he'd felt during that midnight watch, when boundaries had dissolved and he'd become part of the voyage itself. This was what Halvard had been teaching him all along, not just through words, but through example, through the quality of attention the old man brought to every sailing aspect. The week passed quickly, and then it was time to load the ship with new cargo, timber and furs and dried fish, and begin the return voyage. The crew assembled on the dock. Supplies were checked and rechecked. Final farewells were made with people they'd come to know during their stay. And then they cast off, the ship catching wind and turning its bow south toward home. The return voyage had a different quality than the journey north. The crew was more relaxed, delivery pressure removed now that the outbound cargo had been successfully traded. Weather held fair, winds favorable, and they made excellent time. Eric continued his training, spending hours each day with the Sunstone, with the stars, with all the subtle wayfinding arts that Halvard had accumulated over his long career. But there was also time for rest, for simply being on the water without constant learning focus. Eric would sometimes lie on the deck during the day, feeling sun on his face, listening to sounds of ship and sea and crew's occasional conversation. And he would feel grateful, not for anything specific, but for everything, for the simple fact of being alive and aware and part of this incredible journey. On the 5th day of the return voyage, a fog rolled in again, thick and encompassing. But this time, Eric felt no anxiety about it. Halvard handed him the Sunstone without a word, and Eric took it confidently, held it up to gray sky, turned it slowly, patiently, until he found the patterns he was looking for. 2 degrees to starboard, he said clearly, and the helmsman adjusted course. Halvard watched with quiet satisfaction. The student was learning. In time, perhaps not long, he would be ready to navigate on his own. And when that happened, when Eric could guide ships safely through fog and storm, using the Sunstone and the stars and all the accumulated wisdom of generations of navigators, then Halvard could rest. His knowledge would live on, would continue serving, would help keep sailors safe on these dangerous northern waters. That evening, as they sat together watching fog swirl around the ship in strange, hypnotic patterns, Halvard spoke about his own teacher, an old woman named Astrid who had been one of the few female navigators of her generation. "She taught me the Sunstone when I was about your age," he said, voice soft with memory. "I thought I was learning a technique, a tool, but she was teaching me a way of being in the world. She used to say that the Sunstone didn't find the sun. We did. The stone just helped us see what was already there, what was always there, even when hidden." She said life was like that too. The meaning, the beauty, the connection, it's always present, always available. We just need the right tools, the right attention to perceive it. "Do you believe that?" Eric asked. "I do," Halvard said. "I've seen too much beauty on these voyages, felt too many moments of grace and wonder to believe otherwise. The world is full of gifts, constantly offering itself to us. We just have to slow down enough, quiet down enough to receive them." They sailed on through the fog, through days and nights, through fair weather and foul, making their way south by skill and by feel and by the ancient art of reading light through crystal. And Eric absorbed it all, not just technical knowledge, but the deeper wisdom, the understanding that navigation was a metaphor for life itself, that learning to find your way across the ocean taught you how to find your way through existence. When they finally sighted home, when the familiar coastline emerged from morning mist and the crew began to cheer, Eric felt a complex mixture of emotions. Joy at returning safely, yes, but also a strange sadness that the voyage was ending, that these precious days of learning and discovery were complete. He looked at Halvard and saw the same mixture reflected in the old man's weathered face. "There will be other voyages," Halvard said, reading Eric's expression. "As many as you want, for as long as you want. The sea doesn't go anywhere. It's always there, always ready to teach those willing to learn." They brought the ship into harbor, secured it to the dock, began the familiar process of unloading cargo and settling accounts. The Jarl came to greet them, pleased with the voyage's success, and he clapped Eric on the shoulder with something that might have been pride, though he still didn't quite understand why his son had chosen this path instead of the more traditional route of warrior and raider. But Eric didn't care about his father's incomprehension. He had found something more valuable than approval. He had found his calling, his purpose, the thing that made his life feel meaningful and right. He would be a navigator, like Halvard. He would learn the secrets of Sunstone and Star, would master the subtle arts of wayfinding, would spend his life in service of the sea and the ships that crossed it. That evening, after all cargo had been unloaded and all business concluded, Eric and Halvard stood together on the dock, looking out at water as the sun set behind them, casting their long shadows across the harbor. "Thank you," Eric said simply, "for everything you've taught me." "I've taught you very little," Halvard replied. "The sea taught you. I just helped you pay attention to what it was saying." They stood in comfortable silence as light faded and stars began emerging. And in that silence, Eric understood that this was what he wanted his life to be. Full of such moments, full of such beauty, full of the deep satisfaction that came from being fully present with the world, from learning to read its many languages, from finding his way by light both visible and hidden. The sunstone rested in his pocket, warm against his leg despite cooling evening air. Tomorrow there would be other tasks, other responsibilities. But tonight, there was this, the harbor quiet, the ship resting easy at dock, the sky darkening overhead, and the presence of a teacher who had given him not just knowledge, but a way of being in the world that would serve him for all his days. Actually, there was one more lesson Halvard wanted to share before the voyage truly ended. The next morning, he invited Eric to walk with him along the coast, away from the settlement, to a place where cliffs rose high above the sea and the view stretched for miles in all directions. It was a climb, steep and tiring, especially for Halvard's old legs, but they made it, reaching a flat promontory where they could sit and look out over the vast expanse of water they had just crossed. Halvard pulled the sunstone from his pouch and held it out to Eric. "Take it," he said. "What?" Eric was confused. "But it's yours. You need it." "I'm giving it to you," Halvard said firmly. "I have others, and more importantly, I'm getting too old for many more voyages. This stone has served me well for 30 years. Now it's time for it to serve you." Eric took the crystal, feeling its familiar weight, seeing it with new eyes now that it was truly his. He understood what Halvard was saying without saying, that this was a passing of the torch, a formal recognition that Eric had graduated from student to navigator in his own right. "I'll take care of it," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I know you will. But more than that, use it. Don't just preserve it like some sacred relic. Take it on voyages. Let it guide ships. Let it do the work it was meant to do. Tools are only valuable when they're used. Halvard turned to look at the sea, at the play of light on water, at clouds moving slowly across the sky. You know, he said softly, I've spent my whole life finding my way across these waters, and in all that time, I was really just learning how to find my way through my own life. The navigation was always a metaphor, though I didn't understand that when I was young. I thought it was about ships and cargo and getting from one place to another. But it was about so much more, about attention and presence and trust and humility and beauty and meaning. He paused, gathering his thoughts. The sunstone finds the sun even when we can't see it. That's its magic. But the deeper magic is what it teaches us, that there's always light, even in the darkest fog, even in the deepest night. We just need the right tools and the right attention to find it. And once you learn that lesson, once you really understand it, you carry it with you everywhere. You become someone who can find light in darkness, who can navigate by what's hidden, who can trust what can't be seen. Eric listened, understanding that this was Halvard's final teaching, the distillation of everything he'd learned over decades of sailing. And he felt the weight of it, the responsibility and the gift of receiving such wisdom. They sat there for a long time as the sun climbed higher and the day warmed around them. Neither felt the need to fill silence with words. The sea spoke for them. The wind carried messages they didn't need to translate, and the sunstone rested between them like a promise made and kept. Eventually, they made their way back down the cliff, back to the settlement, back to the ordinary business of life on land. But something had shifted, had been completed. Eric was no longer an apprentice. He was a navigator, carrying forward the knowledge and wisdom of those who had come before him, ready to add his own discoveries to the tradition, ready to teach others when his time came. Halvard returned to his house, tired from the climb, but satisfied. He had done what he set out to do. He had found someone worthy of the knowledge, someone who understood that navigation was about more than technique, someone who could carry the wisdom forward. And Eric walked through the settlement with the sunstone in his pocket, already planning his next voyage, already imagining the places he would go and the things he would discover. But more than that, he walked with a new quality of attention, noticing things he'd never noticed before. The way light fell through clouds, the smell of salt and seaweed on the wind, the particular blue of the sky at this time of day. He walked like someone who had learned to navigate, not just ships, but life itself. The seasons turned. Winter came with its long nights and short days. And during those dark months, Eric studied the stars from land, learning their patterns more deeply, preparing for the voyages that would come when spring returned. Halvard taught him whenever he had questions, but increasingly, Eric found his own answers, trusted his own perceptions, developed his own relationship with the tools and techniques of navigation. When spring finally arrived and the sailing season began again, Eric signed on as navigator for a merchant vessel heading to Iceland. It would be his first voyage as the primary navigator, the one responsible for finding the way. Halvard came to see him off, and they embraced briefly on the dock. "Remember," the old man said, "the sunstone finds the sun, but you find the way. Trust yourself, trust the ship, trust the sea, and pay attention. Always, always pay attention." Eric nodded, too full of emotion to speak. Then he boarded the ship, took his position, and gave the order to cast off. As the ship pulled away from the dock, as the settlement grew smaller behind them, he looked back one last time to see Halvard standing there, one hand raised in farewell, a small figure growing smaller, still as distance increased between them. But Eric didn't feel sad. He felt ready for whatever the voyage would bring, whatever challenges and discoveries lay ahead. He pulled out the Sunstone, held it up to the clear spring sky, and smiled. The sun was visible, bright and warm, but he used the stone anyway, practicing, preparing for the times when the sun would be hidden and only the stone could find it. The ship sailed north, following the Whale Road, cutting through waters that generations of Vikings had crossed before. And Eric navigated, using sunstone and stars, using wind and wave patterns, using the accumulated wisdom of his teacher and his own growing skill. He made mistakes, corrected them, learned from them. He made good decisions, trusted them, built on them. And slowly, over the course of that voyage and the ones that followed, he became what Halvard had been, a true navigator, someone who could find their way through fog and storm, someone who could read the hidden patterns of light and water and sky, someone who understood that the journey was the destination, that the navigation was the life, that paying attention was the highest form of prayer. Years passed. Eric made many voyages, gained reputation as a skilled navigator, trained his own apprentices in time. He never saw Halvard again. The old man died peacefully in his sleep 2 years after that final farewell on the dock. But he felt Halvard's presence on every voyage, heard his voice in the wind, saw his wisdom reflected in the sunstone's subtle patterns. And when Eric himself grew old, when his hair turned white and his hands grew stiff, and he knew his sailing days were coming to an end, he found a young person to train, someone who showed the same quiet attention, the same hunger to learn, the same understanding that navigation was about more than finding your way from one place to another. He gave this student his Sunstone, the same stone Halvard had given him all those years ago, and he taught them everything he knew. Not just the techniques, but the wisdom, not just how to use the tools, but how to be present with the journey, how to find light in darkness, how to trust what cannot be seen. And so the knowledge passed forward generation to generation, teacher to student, the Sunstone moving from hand to hand, each navigator adding their own discoveries to the tradition, each one learning that the true navigation is internal, that finding your way across the ocean teaches you how to find your way through life. The sea remains, constant and changing, always ready to teach those willing to learn. The sun continues its daily journey across the sky, hiding behind clouds sometimes, always present even when invisible. And the Sunstone rests in the hands of those who know how to use it, splitting light into patterns, revealing what cannot be seen directly, teaching the ancient lesson that there is always a way forward, always light to guide you, if you know how to look, how to trust, how to pay attention. This is the way of the navigator. This is the wisdom of the Sunstone. This is what Halvard taught Eric, and Eric taught others, and those others taught still more, an unbroken chain of knowledge and presence and deep attention to the miracle of being alive and aware and moving through the world with purpose and grace. The fog rolls in again, as it always does. But those who carry the Sunstone know not to fear it. They know that even when the sun is hidden, it's still there, still shining, still offering its light to those who know how to find it. They know that navigation is about trust as much as technique, about presence as much as knowledge, about becoming part of the journey rather than separate from it. And so they sail on, these navigators, across the Whale Road, under skies both clear and clouded, finding their way by light both visible and hidden, carrying forward the ancient wisdom that the world is always speaking to us, always offering guidance, always showing us the way, if we slow down enough, quiet down enough, pay attention deeply enough to receive its gifts. The sunstone glows softly in hands that know how to hold it. The ship cuts through water that has carried countless vessels before and will carry countless more to come. The stars wheel overhead in their eternal patterns. And somewhere, always somewhere, a teacher is passing knowledge to a student, an old navigator is sharing wisdom with a young one. The tradition continues, the light is found, the way is revealed. This is enough. This has always been enough. This will always be enough. Pay attention. The sun is always there. The light is always present. The way is always available. You need only the right tools, the right attention, the right trust to find it. Sleep comes peacefully to those who have learned to navigate, to those who have found their way not just across the sea, but through life itself, to those who rest easy knowing they have lived with attention and presence and purpose, knowing they have passed their wisdom forward, knowing they have been part of something larger than themselves. The sunstone rests. The ship rocks gently on the swells. The navigator closes their eyes, feeling the journey continue even in stillness, feeling the connection to all who have sailed before and all who will sail after, feeling the eternal now that is the only time that truly exists. This is the way. This is the teaching. This is the gift. Receive it with gratitude. Live it with presence. Pass it forward with love. The voyage continues. It always has. It always will. And you are part of it. Now and forever. Finding your way by light, both visible and hidden. Navigating by wisdom, both learned and discovered. Living each moment with the full attention it deserves. Rest now. The sunstone has found the sun. The way is clear. The journey is good. Sleep well, navigator. You have found your way. But there are more stories to tell before the sun sets completely on this tale. More teachings to share. More moments on the water that shaped what Eric would become and what he would pass forward to future generations. Let us return to those middle years, after Eric had received the Sunstone from Halvard, but before he became an elder himself, to the time when he was making his own voyages and discovering his own truths about navigation and life. There was a voyage when Eric was perhaps 30 winters old, already respected as a capable navigator, but still learning, still growing. The Jarl had commissioned him to guide a ship carrying a very important cargo, not goods for trade, but a bride. The daughter of a northern chieftain was being sent south to marry a powerful lord, and the voyage had to be made with utmost care, delivering her safely and on time for the wedding ceremony. Eric felt the weight of this responsibility differently than he had felt the weight of cargo or crew safety. This was a person, a young woman whose entire future depended on arriving safely at her destination. Her name was Sigrid, and she was 16, frightened of the sea voyage, but trying to hide it behind a mask of aristocratic composure. On the first day of sailing, Eric noticed her standing at the rail, gripping it so tightly her knuckles were white, staring out at the water with a mixture of fear and wonder. He approached her carefully, not wanting to intrude, but sensing that she might benefit from understanding what was happening, from being included in the voyage rather than being merely cargo to be delivered. "Have you sailed before?" he asked gently. She shook her head. "Never. I lived my whole life inland. I'd never even seen the ocean until yesterday." Eric nodded. "It can be frightening the first time. All that water, nothing solid beneath you except wooden planks. But if you understand it better, if you learn to read it, the fear transforms into something else." "Into what?" she asked, curiosity momentarily overcoming her anxiety. "Into respect, into fascination, into a kind of love, even." He pulled out the sunstone from his pouch. "See this? It helps me find the sun even when clouds hide it. Would you like to learn how?" Her eyes widened. "Is that allowed? I thought navigation was secret knowledge, kept only by those trained in it." "Knowledge becomes more valuable when shared, not less," Eric said, echoing something Halvard had once told him. "And you're part of this voyage. You might as well understand it." Over the days that followed, Eric taught Sigrid the basics of navigation. He showed her how to use the sunstone, though her untrained eyes couldn't yet perceive the subtle patterns he saw so easily. He taught her to identify key stars and constellations, to read the color and movement of water, to feel the wind's direction and strength. And most importantly, he taught her to pay attention, to be present with what was happening rather than lost in anxiety about what might happen. The transformation in her was remarkable. As she learned to read the sea, her fear didn't disappear. The ocean was still vast and powerful and dangerous, but it became manageable. She developed a relationship with the voyage, became a participant rather than a passive passenger. And Eric saw in her the same quality he'd had when he first learned from Halvard. That quietness, that capacity for genuine attention. On the fourth night of the voyage, they encountered the most spectacular display of northern lights Eric had ever seen. The sky came alive with curtains of green and blue and purple, rippling and dancing overhead like some celestial celebration. The entire crew stopped what they were doing to watch, transfixed. Sigrid stood beside Eric at the rail, her earlier fear completely forgotten in the face of such beauty. "What causes it?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "There are old stories," Eric said. "Some say it's the Valkyries riding across the sky. Others say it's reflections of light from distant shores. I don't know the truth of it, but I know that when you see something like this, when you're present with such beauty, it changes you. It reminds you that the world is full of miracles if you pay attention to them." "Is that what navigation is really about?" she asked perceptively. "Not just finding your way, but learning to pay attention?" Eric smiled. "You're understanding faster than I did. It took me years to see that. Yes, that's exactly what it's about. The sunstone, the stars, all the techniques, they're just tools to help us develop the capacity for deep attention. And that capacity serves us everywhere, not just on ships." When they finally arrived at the southern port and Sigrid prepared to disembark to meet her future husband, she sought out Eric one last time. "Thank you," she said simply, "not just for bringing me safely, but for teaching me to see. I came onto this ship as cargo, afraid and passive. I'm leaving it as someone who knows how to pay attention, how to be present with whatever comes. That gift will serve me in my marriage and in all the years ahead." Eric felt a warmth in his chest. This was what Halvard must have felt. he realized when students truly understood the deeper teaching. This was the reward that mattered more than gold or reputation. Knowing that you'd pass something valuable forward, that the wisdom would continue living in another person. That voyage taught Eric something important about his role as a navigator. It wasn't just about moving ships from place to place. It was about creating opportunities for transformation, for people to learn the arts of attention and presence, for the journey itself to become the teacher. In the years that followed, Eric sought out opportunities to teach whenever he could. He took on apprentices formally, yes, but he also taught informally, sharing knowledge with crew members who showed interest, explaining navigation to passengers who asked questions, finding ways to pass forward what Halvard had given him. There was a young sailor named Bjorn who had sailed with Eric for 3 years without showing much interest in navigation. He was a good worker, strong and reliable, but content to simply follow orders without understanding the why behind them. Then one day, during a particularly challenging passage through narrow straits where currents and rocks made every decision crucial, Eric invited Bjorn to stand beside him and observe. "Watch how the water moves around that rock," Eric said, pointing. "See how it creates an eddy on the downstream side? That's where we want to go. The current will actually help us there, will pull us through instead of fighting us." Bjorn watched, and something shifted in his expression. "I've sailed through these straits a dozen times and never noticed that," he said slowly. "I just followed orders, never understanding why we went where we went." "Most people go through life like that," Eric said, "following paths without understanding them, doing what they're told without grasping the underlying patterns. But when you start to see the patterns, when you understand the why, everything changes. You stop being a passive participant and become someone who can make informed choices." From that day forward, Bjorn became Eric's most dedicated student. He had the hunger that comes from wasted years, from realizing how much you've missed by not paying attention. And he learned quickly, making up for lost time with intense focus and practice. This taught Eric another lesson, that it's never too late to wake up, never too late to start paying attention, never too late to transform from passive to active, from sleepwalking to fully present. There were also voyages that tested Eric in ways that had nothing to do with navigation techniques. There was the voyage where they lost a crew member to a sudden illness, and Eric had to navigate not just the ship, but the crew's grief, the guilt and fear that swept through them. There was the voyage where they discovered the ship was taking on water faster than they could bail it out, and Eric had to make split-second decisions about whether to try to reach the nearest land or to lighten the ship by throwing cargo overboard. In these moments, Eric understood what Halvard had meant about the sea teaching you about yourself. Under pressure, under threat, you discovered what you were made of. You learned whether you could stay calm in crisis, whether you could make hard decisions when necessary, whether you could lead others through fear towards safety. And Eric discovered that he could. The same qualities he developed for navigation, patience, attention, trust, the ability to stay present under pressure, served him in these crisis moments. He could assess situations clearly, could communicate decisions confidently, could inspire trust in those who depended on him. But he also learned about his limits. There was a voyage where everything went wrong simultaneously. A storm, a broken mast, a fire in the cargo hold, a crew member swept overboard. Eric did everything right, made all the correct decisions, but they still lost the ship. They survived, all of them except the man who'd gone overboard. But they lost the vessel and its cargo, and Eric had to wrestle with the knowledge that sometimes your best isn't enough, that sometimes the sea takes what it wants regardless of your skill. That voyage left him shaken. For weeks afterward, he found himself second-guessing every decision, replaying events in his mind, wondering if there was something he could have done differently. It was Halvard's words, remembered from years earlier, that finally brought him peace. The sea teaches humility. No matter how skilled you become, no matter how much you learn, you're still at the mercy of forces larger than yourself. And that's not a weakness, that's reality. The wisdom is in accepting it. Eric learned to accept it. He learned to do his best, to use all his skill and knowledge and judgment, and then to surrender the outcome to forces beyond his control. This was perhaps the deepest teaching of all, the balance between effort and surrender, between doing everything you can and accepting that it might not be enough. As Eric moved through his 30s and into his 40s, his reputation grew. He became known not just as a skilled navigator, but as a teacher, a wise man, someone who understood the deeper truths that sailing could reveal. Younger navigators sought him out, wanted to learn from him. Jarls and merchants requested him specifically for important voyages. But Eric never forgot that he was still learning, still growing, still being taught by the sea. There were voyages in his 40s that taught him things he'd never encountered in his 20s or 30s. There were situations that demanded new responses, new ways of thinking, new applications of old wisdom. There was the voyage where they encountered a ship in distress, sinking, its crew desperate for rescue. Eric had to make a choice: stop to help, which would mean missing their delivery window and potentially putting his own ship at risk, or sail past, ensuring his own crew's safety and his merchant's profit, but leaving others to their fate. He stopped. He couldn't do otherwise. And in the process of transferring the other ship's crew to his own vessel, in the conversations that followed with men who'd thought they were going to die, Eric learned something about what truly mattered. The merchants were furious when they arrived late. The cargo was partially spoiled. Eric lost his commission and damaged his business relationship. But the rescued men's gratitude, the knowledge that he'd saved lives, the ability to sleep at night knowing he'd made the choice that aligned with his deepest values. These things mattered more than gold or reputation. This was a different kind of navigation, he understood. Not finding your way across water, but finding your way through moral complexity, through competing demands, through the question of what kind of person you wanted to be. Halvard had been dead for many years now, but Eric felt his presence in moments like these. He could almost hear the old man's voice. The sea teaches you about yourself, about what you're really made of, what you really value. Pay attention to those teachings. They're more important than any navigation technique. When Eric was 47, he trained a young woman named Astrid as a navigator. It was unusual. Most navigators were men. But Astrid had sought him out with such determination, such clear hunger to learn, that he couldn't refuse her. She was named after Halvard's teacher, that first Astrid, and Eric took this as a sign that she was meant to carry the tradition forward. Teaching Astrid was different from teaching his male students. She faced skepticism and resistance that they never encountered. Crew members questioned her abilities. Merchants doubted her competence. Other navigators dismissed her as a novelty. But Astrid had something Eric had rarely seen, an absolute unwillingness to be deterred by others' opinions. She learned faster than anyone Eric had taught, practiced longer, asked deeper questions. And she brought something new to the tradition. She noticed patterns Eric had overlooked, made connections he hadn't made, asked questions that opened new avenues of understanding. Teaching her reminded Eric that the tradition wasn't static, wasn't just about preserving what had come before. It was alive, growing, evolving with each new person who engaged with it. One evening, as they sailed under a clear sky full of stars, Astrid asked Eric a question that had been puzzling her. "You've taught me all the techniques," she said. "The sunstone, the stars, reading water and wind and clouds. I'm competent now, maybe even skilled, but I don't yet feel what you described, that sense of being woven into the voyage, of becoming navigation itself rather than someone navigating. How do I reach that?" Eric was quiet for a long moment, considering. This was the question he'd been waiting for, the sign that she was ready for the deeper teaching. "You don't reach it by trying to reach it," he said finally. "That's the paradox. It comes when you stop grasping for it, when you simply do the work so completely, so attentively, that you forget yourself in the doing. It's like, have you ever been so absorbed in something that you lost track of time, lost awareness of yourself as separate from what you were doing?" Astrid nodded slowly. "When I weave, sometimes the pattern in my hands and the loom all seem to become one thing." "Yes, exactly. Navigation is the same. You practice the techniques until they become second nature. You pay attention so consistently that attention itself becomes natural. And then one day, you realize you're not navigating anymore. You're being navigated. The voyage is moving through you as much as you're moving through it. There's no you in the sea. There's just the movement, the flow, the eternal present moment of being on the water." "And that's the real teaching?" Astrid asked. "Not the techniques, but this dissolving of separation? That's the real teaching," Eric confirmed. "Everything else is preparation for it. The techniques are valuable, necessary even, but they're not the destination. They're the path to the destination. And the destination is presence itself, awareness itself, the direct experience of being alive and connected to everything around you." Astrid absorbed this in silence. Eric could see her mind working, integrating what he'd said with her own experience and understanding. This was what he loved about teaching. These moments when you could see someone's comprehension deepen, when knowledge transformed into wisdom. The years continued their steady march. Eric's hair turned gray, then white. His hands, which had held the Sunstone through countless voyages, began to show the wear of decades. Swollen knuckles, scars from rope burns and accidents, skin weathered by salt and sun. His eyes, which had read subtle patterns in crystal and sky, sometimes grew tired now, sometimes needed rest. But his love for the sea never diminished. His fascination with navigation, with the art of finding your way by paying attention, remained as fresh as it had been when Halvard first handed him the Sunstone. And his commitment to teaching, to passing the wisdom forward, only grew stronger. He trained dozens of navigators over the course of his career. Some became as skilled as he was. Some found other paths. But all of them, even those who didn't continue with navigation, carried forward something of what he'd taught them. that quality of attention, that capacity for presence, that understanding that the journey mattered more than the destination. When Eric was 62, he made what he knew would be his last major voyage. His body was telling him it was time to stop. The aches that didn't go away anymore, the fatigue that sleep couldn't cure, the way his eyes struggled to see patterns in the sunstone that had once been so clear. He could still navigate, could still do the work, but he could feel himself approaching the limit of his capacity. The voyage was to Iceland, a route he'd sailed many times before. But this time, he went as teacher rather than primary navigator. Astrid was guiding the ship. Eric was there as backup, as advisor, as the safety net in case something went wrong. But he wanted her to have the experience of being fully responsible, of making all the decisions, of carrying the weight of crew and cargo and voyage. And she did beautifully. She navigated through fog and fair weather, through tricky currents and open water, with a combination of skill and intuition that made Eric's heart swell with pride. She made mistakes, everyone did, but she corrected them quickly, learned from them, didn't let them shake her confidence. On the return voyage, as they sailed south under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, Eric called Astra to sit with him at the stern. "I'm going to stop sailing after this," he told her. "This is my last voyage." She'd been expecting this. He could see it in her face, but still, tears gathered in her eyes. "I'll miss you on the water," she said simply. "I'll miss being on the water," Eric replied. "But it's time. My body is telling me. And more importantly, you're ready. More than ready. You don't need me anymore." "I'll always need you," Astra protested. "As teacher, as mentor, as the one who showed me what was possible." "Then I'll be there," Eric said. "Not on ships, but on land. Teaching, sharing what I know, being available when you have questions. But the voyages themselves, those are yours now. Yours and all the other navigators I've trained. The tradition continues. That's what matters." He pulled out the Sunstone, Halvard's Sunstone, the one that had guided so many voyages, that had been passed from teacher to student for generations. He held it out to Astrid. "This belongs to you now," he said. Astrid took it with trembling hands, understanding the weight of what she was receiving. Not just a tool, but a legacy. Not just crystal, but responsibility. Not just object, but connection to everyone who had come before and everyone who would come after. "The Sunstone finds the sun," Eric said, repeating Halvard's words, which had come from his teacher, which had probably been passed down through generations. "But you find the way. Never forget that. The tools help, but your attention, your presence, your willingness to be fully engaged with the journey. That's what makes navigation possible." They sat together as the ship sailed on through the night, neither needing to speak, both feeling the completion of something and the beginning of something new. Behind them, decades of voyages. Ahead, decades more, but different voyages, different roles, the eternal cycle of teacher becoming student, becoming teacher again. When they arrived home and the ship docked and Eric stepped on a land for what he knew was the last time as an active sailor, he felt a complex mixture of emotions. Sadness, yes, for what was ending. Relief for what was releasing. Gratitude for what had been. And underneath it all, a deep satisfaction, the kind that comes from having done your work, having passed your knowledge forward, having lived your purpose as fully as you were able. He established himself as a teacher on land and navigators, young and old, experienced and novice, came to him with questions, with requests for guidance, with the hunger to understand the deeper truths that sailing could reveal. He taught from his house overlooking the harbor, and on clear nights, he would walk to a promontory where he could see the stars reflected in the water, where he could feel the wind that had carried him across so many miles, where he could remember. He taught for another 15 years, until his body finally gave out completely. And in those 15 years, he trained more navigators than he had in all his sailing years combined. Because freed from the demands of actual voyaging, he could focus entirely on teaching, on sharing, on making sure that what he'd learned wouldn't be lost. When Eric died, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 77, the entire settlement mourned. But they also celebrated because he had lived well, had contributed enormously, had passed his knowledge forward so thoroughly that his physical absence wouldn't diminish the tradition's vitality. Astrid navigated the funeral ship, using Eric's Sunstone, the Sunstone that had guided Halvard and Eric and would now guide her. And as they released his ashes to the water, as they spoke words of farewell and gratitude, she felt the presence of the entire lineage, Halvard and the first Astrid, and all the others stretching back to the beginning of navigation, and Eric now joining them, and herself and her students carrying it forward into the future. The tradition lived. The wisdom continued. The practice of finding your way by light, both visible and hidden, remained alive, as vital and necessary as it had ever been. And the Sunstone, that simple crystal, that piece of Iceland spar that could split light into patterns, that could reveal what was hidden, continued its journey from hand to hand, from teacher to student, from generation to generation. Each navigator added their own wisdom to what had come before. Each one discovered their own truths about attention and presence and trust. Each one learned that navigation was a metaphor for life, that the skills developed on water served you everywhere, that paying attention was the most sacred practice of all. The sea remained constant and changing. The stars continued their eternal wheeling overhead. The sun rose and set, sometimes hidden by clouds, always present even when invisible. And those who learned to navigate learned something more valuable than technique. They learned how to live with full presence, with deep attention, with trust in themselves and the world, and the wisdom flowing through both. This is the way of the Sunstone Navigator. This is the teaching passed down through generations. This is the gift given freely to all who are willing to receive it. The knowledge that there is always light, even in darkness, always a way forward, even in uncertainty, always guidance available if you know how to pay attention. The voyage continues. It has always continued. It will always continue. And each person who learns to navigate adds their own chapter to the story, their own wisdom to the tradition, their own light to the eternal flame that guides sailors home through fog and storm and the vast darkness of northern seas. Sleep well, navigator. You have found your way. Your journey is complete. Your wisdom lives on in all who learn from you, in all who will learn from them, in the unbroken chain of knowledge and presence and attention stretching backward and forward through time. Rest now. The Sunstone has found the sun. The way is clear. The teaching continues. And tomorrow, when new sailors take to the sea, when new students seek the wisdom of navigation, The tradition will be there, alive and vibrant, ready to transform another generation of sleepwalkers into those who are fully awake, fully present, fully engaged with the miracle of being alive on this beautiful, dangerous, endlessly teaching sea. But before we close our eyes completely, before we surrender to sleep's gentle embrace, there are a few more moments worth remembering, a few more teachings worth sharing from those years when Eric walked the threshold between sailor and sage, between navigator and teacher. There was a winter late in Eric's life when a young boy came to his door. The boy couldn't have been more than 12, thin and serious, with eyes that seemed older than his years. He stood on Eric's threshold in the snow, shivering slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "My father says you're the best navigator alive," the boy said. "He says you can find your way through any fog, any storm. He says you know secrets that others don't know." Eric smiled gently. "Your father is kind, but I'm just an old man who spent a lot of time paying attention to the sea." "What's your name, boy?" "Leaf," the boy said, "and I want to learn. Not just navigation, but everything. My father is a fisherman, and he's good at what he does, but he says there's something more, something he can't quite explain, that makes the difference between someone who just sails and someone who truly navigates. He says you understand that something more." Eric invited the boy inside, gave him warm tea, and asked him questions. Why did he want to learn navigation? What drew him to the sea? What did he imagine his life would be? And as Leaf answered, Eric recognized something he'd seen before. That quality of deep curiosity, that willingness to look beyond the surface of things, that hunger not just for technique, but for understanding. This was someone who could learn the real teachings, not just the mechanical ones. "I'll teach you," Eric said, "but not just navigation. I'll teach you how to pay attention, how to be present, how to read the patterns that are always there if you know how to look. And I'll warn you now, this learning will change you. You won't be able to go back to seeing the world the way you did before. Are you ready for that?" Leaf nodded solemnly. "I'm ready." And so Eric took on one more student, perhaps his last. Leaf came to him every day that winter, and Eric taught him as he'd been taught by Halvard all those decades ago. Not just techniques, but philosophy. Not just tools, but wisdom. Not just how to navigate, but how to live. They would sit by Eric's fire, and Eric would tell stories of his voyages. Not the dramatic tales of storms survived and dangers overcome, but the quieter stories. The morning when he'd watched dolphins playing alongside the ship and understood something about joy that he'd never grasped before. The night when the bioluminescence had been so bright that the ship seemed to be sailing through liquid stars. The countless times when paying attention to some small detail, a bird's flight, a cloud's shape, a subtle change in watercolor, had revealed crucial information about where they were or what was coming. Navigation, Eric told Leaf, is ultimately about relationship. Your relationship with the sea, yes, but also your relationship with yourself, with your crew, with the tools you use, with the knowledge you've accumulated, with the mystery of existence itself. A good navigator isn't someone who's mastered technique, though technique matters. A good navigator is someone who's learned to be in right relationship with all these things. Leaf absorbed these teachings with the seriousness they deserved. He asked questions that showed he was really thinking, really integrating what he was learning. And Eric found himself energized by teaching this boy, found depths of understanding in himself that he hadn't known were there. Teaching, he understood anew, wasn't just about passing information forward. It was about discovering what you truly knew, articulating what had been wordless, making conscious what had been intuitive. One day, as spring began to melt the winter snow and the sailing season approached, Leif asked Eric a question that took the old navigator by surprise. "Do you ever regret it?" the boy asked. "Spending your whole life on the sea, always moving, never settling, always between places instead of being rooted in one place." Eric considered this carefully. It was a profound question, one that touched on choices he'd made decades ago, on paths taken and paths not taken. "No," he said finally, "not regret. Sometimes wistfulness, perhaps, for the life I didn't live. I never married, never had children of my own, never built something permanent that would outlast me in the physical world. But I built something else. I built knowledge, I built wisdom, I built a tradition. And I passed it forward to people like you, like Astrid, like all the navigators I've trained over the years. That's my legacy. That's what outlasts me." He paused, looking out his window at the harbor, at the ships preparing for the new season. "And I've had a richness of experience that someone rooted in one place might never have. I've seen things, felt things, understood things that only come from being willing to move, to voyage, to put yourself in relationship with the vast unknown. There's no perfect life, Leif. There are only choices, and the question is whether you make choices that align with your deepest values, your true nature. For me, the choice to be a navigator was right. For someone else, it might be wrong. You have to discover what's right for you." Leif thought about this seriously. "I think it's right for me too," he said. "I don't know why yet, but I feel pulled to the sea the way some people feel pulled to land, to family, to building and settling. Is that strange?" "Not strange at all," Eric assured him. "The sea calls to certain people. Not everyone hears the call, but those who do usually can't ignore it. I heard it when I was about your age. Halvard heard it. Astra heard it. And now you're hearing it. Honor that call. Follow it. See where it leads." When the sailing season began, Leif signed onto a ship as a deckhand, the lowest position, but with Eric's recommendation and with the understanding that he would be learning navigation as he worked. Eric watched the ship sail out of the harbor, watched Leif's small figure at the rail looking back at the land, and felt a familiar mixture of emotions. Hope for the boy's future, satisfaction at having passed the knowledge forward, a touch of envy for the voyages that lay ahead of him, the discoveries he would make, the lessons he would learn. That summer, Eric received visitors from far away, navigators he'd trained years or even decades ago, coming to pay their respect to their teacher, to share stories of their own voyages, to introduce their own students. It became almost a pilgrimage, Eric realized. He'd become a kind of living monument to the tradition, a connection point between generations of navigators. One of these visitors was Magnus, a man Eric had trained 30 years earlier. Magnus was now in his 50s, gray-haired and weathered, a master navigator in his own right. He brought with him a young woman he was training, and he wanted Eric to meet her, to give her his blessing, to share some wisdom that only the eldest teacher could share. They sat together in Eric's house, 3 generations of navigators, and talked late into the night. They shared stories of particularly challenging voyages, of mistakes made and lessons learned, of moments when everything came together perfectly and moments when everything fell apart despite their best efforts. And as they talked, Eric felt a profound contentment. This was what it had all been for. Not his own achievements, not his own mastery, but this continuity, this passing forward of knowledge and wisdom from hand to hand, heart to heart, generation to generation. The tradition was alive not because it was preserved in books or rules, but because it lived in people, in their practice, in their commitment to paying attention and being present and navigating with full awareness. "Tell me," the young woman asked Eric at one point, "what's the most important thing you've learned in all your years of navigating?" Eric thought about this. He could give so many answers. Technical insights about reading water or using the sunstone, philosophical insights about presence and attention, practical insights about leadership and decision-making. But what was the most important thing? That there's no separation, he said finally, between you and the sea, between navigation and life, between technique and wisdom, between the journey and the destination. It all flows together. It's all one continuous movement. And when you really understand that, when you experience it directly, everything changes. You stop trying to control and start participating. You stop fighting and start flowing. You stop being separate and start being part of the whole. He could see the young woman struggling to grasp this, and he smiled. "You won't fully understand what I mean yet," he told her. "That's fine. Keep practicing. Keep paying attention. Keep letting the sea teach you. And one day, probably when you least expect it, you'll have a moment where you get it, where you directly experience that non-separation. And then you'll know, not intellectually, but deeply in your bones." As autumn approached and Eric's 77th year on Earth drew toward winter, he felt his body beginning to fail more seriously. The aches became pains. The fatigue became exhaustion. He could feel himself approaching the end, and while there was some fear in that, there was also acceptance. He'd lived a full life. He'd done his work. He'd passed his knowledge forward. What more could anyone ask? On a particularly beautiful autumn evening, with the sky painted in shades of gold and crimson and the sea calm and reflective, Eric made his way slowly to his favorite promontory overlooking the harbor. It was harder now, the climb that had once been easy, but he was determined to make it one more time. He sat on the rocks where he'd sat so many times before, looking out over water he'd crossed countless times, under skies he'd navigated by for decades. He pulled out a sunstone, not Halvard's, which belonged to Astrid now, but another one he'd kept for himself. He held it up to the setting sun, watched it split light into patterns, remembered all the times he'd used it to find his way through fog and storm. And he thought about his life, about all the voyages and all the students and all the moments of terror and beauty and profound understanding. He thought about Halvard, dead now for decades, but still alive in Eric's memory, still teaching through the lessons he'd passed on. He thought about Astrid and Leif and Magnus and all the others who carry the knowledge forward. He thought about the tradition itself, stretching back into unknown antiquity and forward into unknown futurity, a chain of wisdom and practice and attention that transcended individual lives. "The sunstone finds the sun," he murmured to himself, Halvard's words that had become his words, that would become his students' words. "But you find a way." As darkness fell and stars began to emerge, Eric made his way slowly back down to his house. He was tired, more tired than he'd ever been, and he knew, somehow, that this tiredness wouldn't be cured by a night's sleep. This was the deeper tiredness, the tiredness of a life fully lived, a body fully used, a purpose fully served. He lay down on his bed, not expecting to wake, ready to let go if that's what was coming. And as he closed his eyes, he felt not fear, but gratitude. Gratitude for Halvard's teaching. Gratitude for the sea's lessons. Gratitude for all the students who'd learned from him. Gratitude for the tradition that had given his life such profound meaning. He thought of the Sunstone, of how it revealed light even in darkness. And he understood that death was like that fog he'd navigated through so many times, obscuring, yes, but not eliminating. The light was still there on the other side. You just needed the right tools, the right attention, the right trust to find it. And with that thought, with that understanding, Eric let go. He surrendered to the darkness with the same trust he'd surrendered to the sea, with the same presence he'd brought to every voyage, with the same attention he'd practiced his entire life. He passed peacefully in his sleep, exactly as Halvard had. And the next morning, when they found him, there was a smile on his weathered face, as though he'd seen something beautiful just before the end. The funeral was held on a clear day, the kind of day Eric had always loved for sailing. Astrid navigated the funeral ship, as she'd known she would, using the sunstone that had guided Eric and Halvard and would now guide her. Leif was among the crew, no longer a boy, but a young man who'd completed his first full season as a navigator's apprentice. Magnus was there, and dozens of other navigators Eric had trained over the years, and hundreds of sailors who'd benefited from his teaching even if they'd never formally studied with him. They sailed to the place Eric had specified years earlier, far enough from shore that the deep water would take him, close enough that land would still be visible. And as they released his ashes to the sea, as they spoke words of farewell and gratitude, Astrid felt the presence of the entire lineage more strongly than she ever had before. Halvard and the first Astrid and all the others stretching back through time, and Eric now joining them, and herself and her students and their students carrying it forward. "The sunstone finds the sun," she said aloud, her voice carrying across the water. "But we find the way. Eric taught us that. Halvard taught him, and we will teach others. The voyage continues." And it did continue. Astrid trained navigators for another 20 years. Leif became a master navigator and trained his own students. Magnus taught until he was too old to leave his house. And then he taught from his house, as Eric had. The tradition flowed on, adapting to each new generation, adding new wisdom while honoring the old, remaining alive and vital because it served a real need, taught real skills, offered real transformation. The sunstone, that simple piece of crystal, that tool for revealing hidden light, continued its journey from hand to hand. Dozens of navigators used it over the decades and centuries. Some lost it temporarily and found it again. Some passed it to students who weren't quite ready and had to take it back. But it endured, this physical object that connected generations, that held the memory of countless voyages, countless teachings, countless moments when someone looked through it and saw not just patterns of light, but glimpses of deeper truth. And the teaching endured too, not frozen, not rigid, but living and evolving. Each generation of navigators added their own insights, made their own discoveries, found their own ways of expressing the fundamental wisdom that attention is sacred, that presence is practice, that the journey and the destination are one, that navigating the sea teaches you how to navigate life. There are still navigators today in distant descendant form. They use different tools, satellites and computers and GPS systems that Halvard and Eric couldn't have imagined. But the best of them understand what the old navigators knew, that technology is just a tool, that the real navigation happens in the quality of attention you bring to your journey, that being present with what is matters more than any technique or device. And there are still teachers who understand that teaching is about more than information transfer, that it's about transformation, about helping students develop capacities they didn't know they possessed, about inviting them into practices that will serve them everywhere, not just in the specific domain where the practice originated. The sea remains constant and changing, always ready to teach those willing to learn. The sun continues its daily journey, sometimes visible, sometimes hidden, always present. The stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, and the wisdom of the navigators, that there is always light, even in darkness, always a way forward, even in uncertainty, always guidance available if you pay attention. This wisdom remains too available to all who seek it. This is the legacy of the Sunstone Navigators. This is the gift they passed forward through generations. This is what Eric learned from Halvard and taught to Astrid and Leif and countless others. That the practice of finding your way across the ocean is also the practice of finding your way through life. That the skills developed through navigation serve you everywhere. That paying attention with full presence is the most valuable capacity a human being can develop. Sleep comes now, gentle and complete, to all who have learned these lessons. Rest comes to those who have lived with attention, who have practiced presence, who have navigated by light, both visible and hidden. Peace comes to those who have done their work, passed their knowledge forward, contributed their light to the eternal flame. The Sunstone rests in worthy hands. The tradition continues in dedicated hearts. The wisdom lives on in all who practice paying attention, being present, finding their way by trusting what cannot be fully seen or known. Rest now. Your navigation is complete. Your journey has been full. Your teaching lives on. The way is clear. The light is found. The voyage continues. Sleep well, navigator. You have found your way home. And yet, there is one more story worth telling. One final teaching worth sharing before we surrender completely to sleep's embrace. It is the story of what happened to the Sunstone itself. Long after Eric and Astrid, and even Leif had passed into memory, when the stone had been handed down through so many generations that no one could count them all. There came a time, centuries after Halvard first taught Eric, when the old ways of navigation were being forgotten. New technologies had emerged that seemed to make the Sunstone obsolete. Young sailors learned to navigate by instruments that didn't require the patient attention, the deep presence, the subtle perception that using the Sunstone demanded. They could find their way accurately, efficiently, without developing the capacities that the old navigators had cultivated. The Sunstone passed into the hands of a navigator named Torsten, a descendant of one of Eric's students. Though so many generations removed that the connection was more legend than living memory. Torsten was old himself, one of the last who still used the stone, who still practiced the old arts. and he worried that when he died, the knowledge would die with him. His apprentices, when he could find them, were more interested in the new instruments than the old crystal. They humor him, learning the basic technique of using the Sunstone, but they didn't understand it, didn't feel the deeper invitation it offered, didn't grasp that it was teaching more than navigation. One day, a young woman came to Torsten's door. Her name was Ingrid, and she was different from the other young sailors he'd tried to teach. She worked on a modern ship, used all the latest navigation equipment, was thoroughly trained in contemporary methods. But she'd heard stories about the old navigators, about their wisdom, about the way they practiced navigation as a form of meditation, and she was curious. "I don't need to learn your methods to navigate," she told Torsten honestly. "I'm already a competent navigator by modern standards. But I've heard that the old way taught something more than technique. I want to understand what that something more is." Torsten looked at her carefully, assessing. Then he pulled out the Sunstone, the same stone that had guided Halvard and Eric and Astrid and countless others over the centuries. He handed it to her. "Hold this," he said. "Tell me what you feel." Ingrid took the crystal, expecting to feel. Well, she wasn't sure. Just a piece of stone, she thought. Just an old tool that had been superseded by better technology. But as she held it, as she really paid attention to the sensation of it in her hand, something shifted. The stone did have a presence, a weight beyond its physical mass. And as she held it, as she brought her full attention to it, she began to sense something, not with her eyes or ears or any ordinary sense, but with some deeper faculty she'd never consciously used before. "I feel," she began, then stopped, struggling to find words for the experience. "I feel like it's teaching me how to pay attention. Like just holding it, just being with it is developing some capacity in me that I didn't know I had." Torsten smiled, a slow smile of recognition and satisfaction. "Yes," he said simply, "that's exactly what it does. That's what it's always done. The navigation is secondary. The real teaching is in the quality of attention it helps you develop." Over the months that followed, Ingrid learned to use the Sunstone. Not because she needed to for practical navigation. She had GPS and radar and all the modern tools. But because using it taught her something her modern instruments couldn't teach. How to be fully present, how to perceive subtle patterns, how to trust her own direct experience even when it seemed to contradict what her instruments told her. And as she learned, as she practiced, she began to understand what the old navigators had known. Navigation wasn't just about getting from one place to another. It was about the quality of consciousness you brought to the journey. It was about being fully alive to each moment, fully engaged with what was happening, fully present with the mystery and beauty and danger of being on the water. She started teaching other young navigators, not as a replacement for modern methods, but as a complement to them. She taught them the Sunstone, yes, but more importantly, she taught them presence. She taught them attention. She taught them to experience navigation not just as a technical skill, but as a practice of awareness. And slowly, quietly, the old wisdom began spreading again. Not because it was necessary for physical navigation. The modern instruments worked fine for that. But because people hunger for something more than mere efficiency, something deeper than just getting from point A to point B. They hunger for meaning, for connection, for practices that develop their full human capacities rather than just their technical skills. The Sunstone became, in this new era, what it had perhaps always been, not primarily a navigation tool, but a teaching tool, an object that invited people into deeper relationship with attention and presence and the direct experience of being alive. Modern navigators would use their GPS to actually guide their ships, but they would practice with the Sunstone to develop the inner capacities that made them not just competent technicians, but wise human beings. Ingrid trained dozens of students over her lifetime, and those students trained others, and the tradition continued. Not in the same form it had taken in Halvard's time or Eric's time, but in a form appropriate to the new era. The essence remained the same. Pay attention, be present, understand that how you navigate the journey matters more than how quickly you reach the destination. When Ingrid was old, ready to pass the Sunstone to her most promising student, she held a ceremony. She invited all the navigators she'd trained, and they gathered on a ship at sunset, the sky painted in those colors that never quite have names, the sea calm and reflective. She told them the story of the stone, as much of it as she knew. She spoke of Halvard, though his name had become more legend than history. She spoke of Eric and Astrid and all the others who had used this crystal to find their way through fog and storm. She spoke of how the tradition had adapted over the centuries, had survived even when it seemed it might be lost, had continued because it offered something essential, something that human beings would always need. This stone has guided sailors for centuries, she said, holding it up so everyone could see. But what it really guides is consciousness. It teaches us how to pay attention, how to be present, how to trust our direct experience. These are the capacities that matter, that serve us not just on ships, but everywhere in life. This is what we pass forward. Not a technique, but a practice. Not a tool, but a teaching. Not information, but transformation. She handed the stone to her student, a young man named Anders who had shown the same quiet attention, the same hunger for understanding that had characterized the best students throughout the tradition's history. And as he took it, as he felt its weight and presence, she could see in his eyes that he understood. Not intellectually, but deeply. He would carry it forward. He would pass the teaching on. The tradition would continue. That night, as the ship sailed under stars that had guided navigators since humans first took to the sea, Ingrid felt a profound peace. She had done her part. She had received the knowledge, had lived it, had passed it forward. The chain was unbroken. The light continued to be revealed generation after generation. Through this simple crystal and through the practice, it invited people into. Rest now. The way is clear. Sleep well, navigator.